Perfect. Right then. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join today's call. For those who are not familiar with myself, I will give you a brief introduction. My name is Chris Barnes. I'm one of the BDMs within TD SYNNEX. So specifically, I cover the infrastructure piece of the IBM portfolio. So you probably would have seen me at events such as storage and power. Off the back of the call, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions around what we've discussed today. I'll be absolutely more than happy to support. Otherwise, do feel free to reach out to your storage partner manager. They will be up to speed on the Storage Defender and data resiliency messaging, along with their technical rep. So you have got a lot of support there. With regards to any questions, we won't be taking any during or after the session. So once I have sent out the recording and the slide deck, which will include my contact details, you can reach out to me then. But in doing it this way, we're just trying to offer more of a personal approach and support afterwards if you do have questions. So today, we'll be going over the new features around data resiliency within IBM Storage, which will include a discussion around IBM's new technology, which is called IBM Storage Defender. So effectively, clients are able to cut through data silos, look at ways of strengthening data resiliency and security posture, which we can all agree is quite a huge topic at the moment, and it has been over the last couple of years, especially with certain regulations coming into play in the UK over the next couple of years. This might just be coming in at the perfect time, which of course I'll let Ian go into that so I don't take too much thunder. And then secondly, we'll be going into the new member of the flash system family, which is the FS5045, which personally I think is really exciting. IBM are now offering the data resiliency capabilities that we typically see in the 5200, 73, 95, and now we're funneling it down to the entry-level models, which from a partner perspective means, you can expand the conversation and add more value around data resiliency when we're pitching the lower 5K range, which is really good. Again, I'll let Ian go into that into more detail, but hopefully you find the session very useful and informative. With that being said, I will pass over to Ian and we can go ahead and get started. So Ian, over to yourself.
Awesome, thank you very much. Guys, I do apologize. We seem to have a technical difficulty and we can't seem to get our camera on. So I do apologize that you won't be able to see me as I'm talking. But oh, hang on. There we go. So yeah, what I want to take you through is really a conversation that I've been using a lot with clients on one-on-one basis, actually in, customer events, and wanted to really take you through this sort of story because we're finding it's resonating really well and at lots of different levels. And really, as you will see as we go through this, it's a very relevant conversation, whether it's a small customer, a medium-sized customer, or even a very large enterprise type of customer. And that's really why also we've been sort of updating our flash system family to ensure that we can bring these, this sort of set of capabilities to basically anyone. So let me just start off with a little bit of background for those not necessarily familiar, but obviously cyber attacks is an exceptionally prevalent problem and is not showing any signs of obviously getting any better. The number of attacks just, they've doubled the last 2 years in a row. So it's kind of really very, very large numbers. If you've looked at the reports, you may have seen that cyber attacks as a percentage actually went down very slightly, but it went down by, from 21% to 17%. But don't forget, it was on a number that doubled. So it's still a very prevalent issue. And in fact, in March this year, the number of ransomware attacks suddenly increased 91% in the space of a month, because that's the unfortunate nature of these things. When a new vulnerability is found with things like ransomware as a service, they just, they sell that sort of vulnerability out, onto the dark web and make it very, make it easy for lots of people to do lots of horrible attacks, which is very unfortunate. So that's a very, still a very real threat. But the one that probably really stood out to me actually was these dormant threats. So where organizations are laying the foundation, if you like, for an attack, but they've not actually taken any action yet. And these are certainly believed to predominantly be for for sort of more like cyber warfare, or state-sponsored attacks. So not necessarily someone's after ransomware, but they're just planting the seed ready to cause disruption whenever they feel the time is right. And you can see that actually went from 5% to 21%. But remember, that was on a number that doubled. So it's really about an 8x increase. So that's a real concern that a lot of organizations really could have, threats within their data and just not know about it. It could have possibly got through. It could be laying there dormant. Nothing has happened yet because they're just still waiting for the right time to strike, or for the time they think they're going to cause the most disruption. And obviously, we'll sort of touch on that a little bit more as we go through as to how clearly we're going to need to help organizations kind of deal with that. Now, I find this one sort of quite fascinating as well, because for a long time, this next one, because at one point we used to see a lot of analysts talking about the way to deal with ransomware was just to pay the ransom, budget for paying the ransom. That was actually a recommendation over 2 years ago that we actually heard, customers getting. But the piece that they've got to remember is 26% of clients who paid the ransom still could not recover their data. And so, hey, you could budget for it, you could pay the ransom, but you may still not get your data back. So now you've paid out and you're still in exactly the same situation you were in before, because I very much doubt you're going to get a refund. And so that is a huge problem. The next one I really hope doesn't give anybody any comfort is that it's typically, as near as makes no difference, about half of the production data that gets affected. I do sort of, talk to customers that really shouldn't give them any comfort that it's only half, because it's still going to be very, very disruptive. And this all kind of ties back to the issue is without the right practices in place, i.e., if they're relying on their traditional data protection methodologies, their traditional business continuity methods, i.e., recovering from a backup, or thinking that having replication between two data centers is going to save them. It is not, and unfortunately, it's the industry average says it's going to take them 23 days to recover after an attack if they don't do something differently. So there's kind of the painting the picture as to why they've got to act. And then you've really got on top of that, obviously, around Europe and in the UK, this emergence of, new regulations. So whilst there is, very real costs associated with attacks and real business impacts, they're having to put up their prices, that can make them less competitive because they've got to try and recover the cost. And the reality is, very high percentage of organizations have had at least one. We've seen numbers getting north of 40% have had 4 or more attacks in the space of a 12-month period. So it's a very real problem. And I think this really is a case now of when, not if, someone is going to get attacked. But the regulations is probably the new thing that certainly, the C-suite are going to be really starting to worry about, or depending on size of organization, those certainly high up in the organization, they've got to think about how are they going to become compliant. If you haven't seen, there's things like DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Now that is for financials, but then you've got NIS2, which is a lot of other industries outside of the financials. They are putting regulations in place because what they are extremely worried about is if someone decided to do malicious attacks, so state-sponsored cyber warfare, could they actually cause for banks, for example, not to be able to transact with each other? Could they suddenly cause manufacturing to crumble across an entire industry and cause a catastrophic event for the economy around Europe? And the UK arguably is maybe a little bit ahead of some of those regulations through the Financial Conduct Authority. But you've got the new national cybersecurity strategy coming into effect. So it is being rolled out. This isn't now a case of what's going to happen and, is it going to happen? There are new regulations coming in. And particularly with things like DORA and NIS2 for Europe, they've got to be compliant by January 2025. And in the UK, we are already aware of organizations that have had significant fines due to not being compliant with regulations the UK has already laid out. So there's kind of some very compelling reasons why our customers are going to have to react and do something differently and put in some different practices. Because the fundamental problem, this is what I was alluding to, is that a lot of organizations think, I've invested very heavily in cybersecurity software, and so they should, by the way. It's obviously very important to try and prevent as many of the attacks as possible. But they think that having that and the traditional data protection is going to make them data resilient, i.e. resilient from cyber attacks. It does not. There are different capabilities they need to put in place. If you're not already aware, IBM offers a cyber resiliency assessment. It's called the Cyber Resiliency Assessment Tool, or CRAT, or you can use another acronym, you can pronounce it another way, which is CRAT, but that can often be misunderstood. But that, if you take your clients through that study, and it's a free thing available for all the IBM business partners, you can take your clients through that and help them understand where they're exposed. And really importantly, that assessment really gives a security kind of status. It is not a report that then says, oh, it just so happens you need a flash system this or a defender that. It is really just going through what does their business look like. And from that report, then obviously we can start to look at what are the right technologies they need, where are they exposed, are there areas around the cybersecurity they need to beef up, and what areas around the sort of data resilience do they need to significantly change. So this timeline is really just trying to help illustrate the, what happens if you do nothing. And one of the biggest issues actually is for how long potentially an attack could be in the data before it's noticed. The unfortunate reality for the vast majority of customers out there is the first time they know there's an attack in their data is they get either it's the ransomware demand coming up on the screen, or everything stopped working, or a combination of both. Unfortunately, the reality is most of them are not going to know when there's something lying in their data, as I said, until it's kind of basically too late. And then the enormity of the impact of that is why it's going to take so long to respond and clearly then recover all that data. So this animation is just really to try and help illustrate that issue. Because a lot of clients have thought, I'll recover from my backup. The problem is backups are now the primary attack vector for these attackers. They target backups first, so there's no ability for the customer to actually recover. Once it's done that, it then starts getting into the production workloads and obviously just starts spreading, trying to cause the maximum amount of disruption. So obviously in this example here, we've got these 5 different production workloads. They all end up getting infected. And so actually the customer ends up in a situation where all the production workloads have stopped, they're corrupted, and all the backups are corrupt, so they have no ability to recover. And unfortunately, in this case, the cybersecurity software just didn't pick it up. And that's not to put a down on whether the security software is worth it. There is no way any security software can be 100% absolute. You can't, unfortunately, stop absolutely everything because they're always finding new ways in. It could even be that it has been through, human kind of interaction, introducing something into the data set. You never know how it's going to get in. So the steps that we talk to clients about to try and help make them data resilient, we take it as a foundation that they've already got data protection and security software. We can obviously, through things like the assessment, understand whether they need to be improved to some extent, but we're going to take it as a foundation. They have something there, i.e. they've already got some sort of prevention, to stop as many attacks as possible. The first thing we then really want to introduce to build on top of that is to have these secure, immutable copies of data. And what we really mean by that is truly copies of data that cannot be changed and cannot be deleted once created. So knowing they're going to have a good copy of data that they can recover from. So unlike that, scenario we saw just a second ago, not having it where actually they go to try and recover from backup, it's already been corrupted so that they have no ability and they have no copies to recover from. And there's an awful lot of things to think about when it comes to having truly secure immutable copies. There's multi-factor authentication, there's two-person integrity, there's ensuring the copies can't be mounted in any way and cannot have their attributes changed in any way. So, for example, we've seen others in the industry where they'll say, oh, well, we change it to a read-only volume, but actually also that can mean you can still change it back to becoming read-write, therefore it could be changed. These are truly copies of data that cannot be accessed, cannot be changed, cannot be deleted. They expire on a predetermined expiry date. And therein lies another issue. You have to make sure that your system's dates cannot be changed so people cannot force them to expire. So all of those things are being thought through. Because IBM have actually been doing this now for over 5 years. We actually originally started designing this about 8 years ago on the mainframe. And then obviously we brought it to our distributed platforms about 3 years ago. So this is now something very mature in the IBM portfolio, but it's an important step for our clients. You saw on that graph earlier as well, it's the length of time of not knowing that can be a big problem. So one of the key things that we're trying to help customers with adopting is finding that infection has actually made it into the data. If you think of the security tools as being the perimeter defenses, you're trying to stop anybody getting in. We're providing the insight into, okay, let's keep some cameras pointing inwards. Let's understand if something actually gets through those perimeter defenses, makes it through. We want to spot that as fast as possible. And we're doing that in various ways. So there's things like we do scanning of backups, and you want to do that on a kind of consistent cycle, even for legacy backups, because there could be some new threat that has been discovered. And you want to make sure that you know that all your generations of backups did not have that already in there, because if it was completely unknown, if it was something very clever that had got through, it's quite possible it could have been sitting there for some time. So constantly scanning them to find it is going to be really important. But we're really trying to then take that to another level. And we introduced very recently something called inline data corruption detection. So what we're now doing, literally as you are writing data into the storage array, we are checking that data to see if it looks like it's been compromised. So for example, if it's been encrypted, because someone's trying to do a ransomware attack, be good to pick that up as quickly as possible. And what this new inline data corruption detection means is it means you could, within minutes of an attack happening, be alerted to actually it's in the data. So instead of waiting for that, for everything to stop working and waiting for a ransomware demand to come up, potentially you could actually now have get notification within minutes of it getting in. Clearly, the faster we can help organizations understand their data is under threat, that's going to minimize the scope of it, and it's going to clearly facilitate a faster recovery, because maybe we can restrict it to one workload being infected rather than the 5. Maybe it's 50 terabytes rather than 500 terabytes. And clearly that's going to aid much faster recovery. And the really good thing is even in some of our kind of new backup technologies, again, we're kind of following the same principle. As we actually back up the data, we're again scanning it. So we're scanning the data at multiple points. This is multiple layers of protection and discovery. So we're checking it as we write it into a storage array. We actually then take these secure snapshots on the system, and we'll scan one of those every day. And even when you're then sending it to your backup device, again, as it's being sent through, it's actually, again, doing inline checking. So we are trying to pick it up at all different points to give as early insight as possible to something going on in the organization. And all of this really is about, as I said, leading to really fast recovery. Being able to help businesses recover their critical applications, extremely quickly is going to be crucial. Clearly, they cannot afford to be down for days or weeks. And we're aware of organizations that certainly have taken a very long time trying to get back. And one of the other factors within this is, if you've not seen, insurance companies have actually now been increasing the number of requirements to even provide an insurance policy against cyber attacks, and indeed have been withdrawing them from an awful lot of organizations now. So insurance companies are there to want to make money, and they're actually realizing they've been paying out far too much on cyber attacks, so they've been pulling back on that somewhat. And so being able to prove that these type of capabilities is almost certainly going to become paramount to getting insurance policies, or at least at a policy, premium that's going to be affordable for the organizations as well. And the last key piece in all of this is automation of it all. I keep using the example of those very familiar with IBM. We have these things called red books, and they can be 500-700 pages long sometimes. And the last thing any organization needs is to be, on page 400 in the panic of everything stopped working, trying to work out what the next step is and finding out they missed the step that was on page 399. That's not going to work for organizations. And indeed, we've helped, a farm produce company, for example. So not even, one of the biggest banks in the world, although clearly we've helped a lot of those too. But I like this farm produce company that we work with because they just recognized if they were attacked, particularly if one of their competitors decided they wanted to try and take them out the industry, if they were down for a significant period of time, they now would potentially have meat going off. They can't provide the restaurants and the shops because they don't know what they've ordered. They don't know, all the details. And now they're going to have very dissatisfied customers. But they're a farm produce company. They're not an infrastructure company. So they needed the automation to make the process very simple following an attack to actually recover and get the business operational as quickly as possible. And this is why we're framing this as this really about data resilience for everyone. We can help people with all of these capabilities and the automation so that they don't have to be, large. They don't have to have big skills, lots of resources. We can help them irrespective of their type of environment. And then we're really trying to help organizations understand this from two different angles here. There's the minimum viable company. What are those business critical applications they must have backup and running? Because whilst they're not running, it is costing them money for every second, every minute, every hour that they're not, they're unavailable. And understanding truly what makes up that minimum viable company is critical. And obviously we've got some great tools that can help them understand that. Because whilst some organizations will think they know, we did see an example with an organization that had an outage, got everything back up and running. They were pretty much celebrating and patted themselves on the back, then saw that the phones were ringing because they'd forgotten to include user credentials in their minimum viable company recovery. So whilst everything was running, nobody could log in. So it's really important we understand those pieces. So where it's required, we can help them recover, literally, whether it's in minutes and hours, really keep that disruption to an absolute minimum. And for everything else, help those other systems come back in, whether it's a day or maybe 2 days, and certainly not 23, whatever kind of fits with their kind of business model. So they're really important to think about those sort of two different disparate areas. And really importantly, all of this means that we can help recover the non-critical workloads in perhaps, as I said, a day or two, depending on the timelines the customer needs. But with things like this new inline data corruption detection, helping us understand the attack much faster, we're, getting customers' recovery down to just, a small number of hours. We already have customers that have tested and continually test where we have proven we can help customers recover in less than 2 hours, from an attack. So this isn't hearsay, this isn't marketing, this is true. We can do it, and we've proved we can actually do it, minimize the disruption for businesses. So back to this, high-tech animation again, same sort of situation. We've still got the production workloads running top left, but now bottom left, you'll see we have our inline data corruption detection constantly scanning, sending metadata to our machine learning in the cloud to understand if it looks like their data is under threat. We've now got on the top right-hand side, we're doing our secure immutable copies, and then once a day doing a really deep scan on one of those, just again to make sure that the data looks clean. And of course, we've now got a secure backup as well, so they can't actually get into that. And in this scenario, we're using IBM's QRadar source, so we're using the IBM security tools and their sort of playbooks, so we know how to react to a threat. So if we replay the attempted attack here, okay, so someone's got in, the data's got into the production environment, but our inline data corruption detection picks up that threat, sees it's happening, sends an alert over to the security software to inform it that the data is under attack. It's then going to request an action because it could be, for example, that someone had deliberately turned on encryption in an application, but they just forgot to tell a storage administrator or the security administrator. So actually, maybe it was meant to be. In this scenario, it was not an expected action. So now they're going to make sure the first step is they're going to isolate that environment so that infection cannot spread around the rest of the workloads. Once they've done that, they can start the process to do the recovery. and find a good clean copy of data. So in this scenario, it's tried to recover the most recent copy. It's done a deep scan, but actually clearly, the infection had first got in, perhaps at, just before 6 o'clock. So it was picked up, but actually when the copy was taken, there was already some infection in it. So clearly we don't want to recover that copy. To save time, I'm not going to take you through several generations here. We're going to say the previous copy, when we mount it, we scan it, we find that's a really good copy. Now we have a good copy of data we can recover back to the production environment, clean it all up, and get the production systems running again, keeping that disruption to an absolute minimum, with really, really fast recovery. The slight piece that maybe is misleading on this, the reality probably is the clean room where we were doing the scanning, you would probably bring the production system back up there so that you can retain the corrupted environment and do forensic analysis on it afterwards. So in that regard, this animation is perhaps a little bit misleading, but the point is they can get their systems back up and running, have those critical workloads running again in whatever form. And important, as you'd have seen here, all of that is through automation. So there's no need for following multiple steps through a red book or a white paper or a bunch of documentation. They can literally have this whole thing automated so it becomes truly seamless and simple for them. And that's really the beauty of what IBM can provide. If you've got the right opportunity for both the security and the IBM storage, when we bring those together, the integration that we can provide is really second to none. I do not want you to think, however, that if they don't have IBM security, you can't sell them IBM storage. We've built many environments for customers around other security tools, but clearly we have the best integration between the two. And you just saw the kind of the level of automation we can deliver when we've got those two things running together. So that kind of brings me to, this is what IBM announced earlier in the year. Really trying to help bring all of this together is why IBM has introduced IBM Storage Defender. It is helping to have this accelerated discovery, these secure copies, and the automation that we need to deliver all of this. I think the other way to think about this as well is, for an awful lot of organizations, it is just too complex. They've got too many things to be monitoring. In fact, even from a security tools perspective, I heard fairly recently, I think the average is something like they have over 100 different tools in organizations. It's frightening. The way I'm trying to help people visualize this, we've all seen this film where there's a security guard sitting at his desk. He's got, 10 security monitors in front of him. And invariably, the attackers do something on the top left monitor to distract him whilst they're actually doing something they shouldn't be doing on the one at the bottom right. And that is the unfortunate reality for organizations at the moment. They've got so many security tools. They've got all these different, storage elements that they're trying to manage as well. It's got too complex and things get missed. So what Storage Defender is helping to do is pull all that back together so you can have a single pane from which you can understand the status of your entire storage infrastructure from a data protection, from a cyber resilience, everything capability point of view. And as I said, and even within that is incredibly improved, backup capabilities so that actually you can recover faster, that you can be scanning the data, etc. So it's a true set of capabilities for any size of organization, irrespective whether they're on traditional workloads, VMware, containers, then we've got the right solution to help them. And then this sort of kind of brings us back into, it was mentioned at the beginning about we've launched this new flash system 5045. And really that is now helping us provide all of those capabilities that I was talking about, from the cybersecurity integration, the secure immutable copies, the discovering of threats, the rapid recovery, and the kind of automation pieces. With now the introduction of having things like the safeguarded copy, which is our secure immutable copy, and our inline data corruption detection, now even on our entry flash system 5045, this becomes affordable for any organization from entry through to the very largest enterprise. And obviously you can complement those storage arrays with IBM Storage Defender to help with the automation to bring it all together. That's really what IBM has introduced most recently, is this new 5045. It's a kind of an evolution of the previous generation 5035, as I said, now with these new data resilient sets of capabilities. So an organization doesn't have to feel left out perhaps if it's more at the entry, one of the smaller organizations, now becoming data resilience becomes very affordable, literally for anyone. I hope that was sort of useful for you to understand what IBM Storage is bringing to the market, how IBM is working with security to really help organizations address this, ever increasing threat around cyber attacks. And I do hope you want to understand more from how we can help you take this to your clients, because you're going to look like a very valued partner in front of your clients if you can help them resolve this. As I said, I've been talking to an awful lot of organizations this year particularly, and it doesn't matter whether it's a CEO or a storage administrator or even a security administrator, all of those different personas. The thing I'm seeing repeatedly is the number of people who just don't understand this issue yet. They're thinking they're okay. If you can help them understand this, you're going to be able to help save them before that attack actually happens. And obviously that's going to, put up your value in front of that client significantly. But with that, I shall hand back.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Ian. If you just want to click on a few there, that's perfect. So just get the rest up there, that'll be absolutely perfect. So yeah, in terms of, that was brilliant, that, by the way, thanks very much for going into that. If people do have questions, like I say, do reach out to myself. My contact details are at the bottom there, so I will be sending the recording out along with the slides. So yeah, like I say, feel free to reach out. Hopefully in doing it this way, it's a bit more of a personal approach, and like I say, if there needs to be some form of enablement or a workshop that you think integrating the likes of FS5045 or the Storage Defender would be useful, we can certainly do it. But in terms of a call to action, what I would take away, just a couple of things from my end, is the likes of the test drive program. So, in terms of offering that capability to actually have a system on site, use features like safeguarded copy, the immutability side of it, gets there within 2 weeks, completely free of charge as well. It can only be beneficial to really have a good go of the GUI and get that insight. Same with the cyber resiliency assessment tool as well, absolutely free of charge. Give your clients that understanding of where those blind spots are. Make sure they've got that security posture in place so they can actually look at the environment and go, right, okay, I know what I need to do here to buffen up a little bit. So these assessments are absolutely free of charge. We do have storage assessments as well, but we're due to the fact we are particularly focusing on data resiliency. CRAT which is probably the better way to pronounce it, is probably a good way to start a conversation with clients. I know Alex, you did have some things you want to go over with the Defender configurator and Protect Health Check.
Hey Chris, just quickly before Alex goes through that, just on the test drive program, I thought it'd be worth highlighting the win rate of using that test drive program, just so all our partners understand. When using that test drive program, our win rate is over, I think it's over 95%. I forget the exact number. So it is really helping us win in an awful lot of clients.
Correct. Yeah, no, good point that, Ian. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. So there's lots of technology that's been talked about today, and a new product launch, which is Storage Defender. To help people license it, to help people build the configuration of Storage Defender, we brought out a really nice configurator. The link is on the slide there, so please feel free to have a click around it and just have a little bit of a test. But it's a really easy way to build a Storage Defender config. I know I'm talking about configs and software, but you do have to build it up. We license Storage Defender in something called resource units. So we're kind of moving away from terabytes and all the other different flavors that we've got within our data resiliency program. But it's a really easy tool. If you do get stuck, you can come to Chris, you can come to myself, and we'll happily go through the first few configs with you over WebEx or Zoom or whatever it is. So we're here to help to build those configurators. And there's a really nice easy button that you click on it at the end, and it will email to create the quote. Then the next one down is, these are one of the hooks that you can, why is a customer going to go and talk to me, or what can I ring the customer for, is the Storage Protect Health Check. So some really low hanging fruit is to go to your existing install base. So go to your Storage Protect customers, or and then talk maybe around renewal times, or even halfway through a renewal, to talk about maybe we could do a health check. maybe we can compare your environment to, Ian talked about red books earlier, you can compare them to our red books, you can compare them to how we would configure it. And it's all based on a traffic light system. So it's red, amber and green, and we can go through with the customer and we can help you out. It's a completely free service and it's a health check. And what leads from a health check is always discussions around where we can do things better. And obviously we can then start to broaden the conversation into cyber resiliency, and we can start to upsell and cross-sell from a really simple free health check.
Yeah, and I think, Alex, just on that, there's clearly things like it could be that, there's an opportunity to upsell them from, say, Protect into Defender. There's even for existing, backup environments, we can help them introduce things like Predator, for example, to help them with the scanning of their existing backups. So yeah, those tools do really help with finding the right solution for the customer to help them become, more resilient and ensure that their backups are going to be recoverable.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Ian. Just another thing as well. Partner marketing kits. So we do have ready-made campaigns. If you do have an IBM ID, in terms of my digital marketing, like I said, we've got ready-made campaigns there specifically targeting the likes of data resiliency with Flash system. So in terms of having, ready-made campaign guides, emails, landing pages, telescripts, solution briefs, all the bits and bobs that you typically get involved in with a campaign, it's already there. So if you do need help with that, like I say, please feel free to reach out to myself. That link in particular there should take you to the cyber resiliency with Flash system partner marketing kit. So yeah, like I say, this will get sent out. Feel free to click on the link and reach out if you do need support. Again, as mentioned, with questions or anything like that, if you've got any feedback, any kind of, what you'd like to get next from myself or, from IBM directly, if you've got any ideas that you really want to home in on and you want the support, maybe whether it be a workshop, a webinar or anything like that, we really do push feedback. So if there's anything you'd like us to home in on, please do reach out to myself. Ian, Alex, I don't know if there's anything else on your end you'd like to mention before we finish the call.
No, I think you covered it. Obviously, if people want to know more about whether it's Defender or the Flash system arrays, they can obviously find that on the IBM websites. Or if please give the feedback to Chris if you'd like us to go through either of those in a little bit more detail. We could do that as a follow-up.
Well, just before you go, Ian, we have got a question on the Zoom chat. I don't know if you can click on it, but Rick Gray's got a question around the playbooks for QRadar. So I don't know if you could quickly.
I can certainly read that out if you're happy to answer that one, Ian. Rick Gray's put, you mentioned QRadar have playbooks. Can you please explain what they are? Also, what events are being sent to QRadar?
So actually, there's some different things we can do with the integration with QRadar. So we can actually integrate with the QRadar SIM, for example. It can actually be doing monitoring of the audit logs within the Flash system. So if it sees some unusual activity in terms of how people are trying to log in to even the storage system, that can create an alert back into the security tools. The QRadar system itself, if it determines that there's a high risk in the organization of a threat, it can even instruct the storage array to take an emergency safeguarded copy, for example. So there's really great integration between the two from that regard. And then in terms of the playbooks really are, you can customize to have what are the steps for that organization that they're going to want to have their security teams and their infrastructure teams go through. And obviously some of those will be automated. Some of them will be, like I showed you, obviously I did a very simplistic 3 steps because I wasn't going to try and show everything. But actually we do actually have a demonstration of how we integrate with safeguarded copy and QRadar, and that will actually give you an example of a playbook. So that can show you a little bit more detail. But those playbooks really are about building out for an organization what is actually the steps they're going to need to go through in the event of this incident. What are the steps you follow?
Perfect. Brilliant. Yeah, Rick's happy with that one. Thank you. Brilliant. So yeah, like I say, feel free to reach out. I will end the recording now and thank Ian and Alex for the input. Again, do reach out if you need anything and we can, certainly go from there. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Cheers.